Hello, I'm Trudy Rainsbury and this is the seventh and penultimate in a series of videos aimed at offering practical ideas and strategies for those adults supporting autistic children and young people. Today I'm going to be focusing on ideas and strategies for supporting emotional regulation, as opposed to considering it to be behaviour management or challenging behaviours. What many people consider to be challenging or negative behaviour is a form of communication, often expressing extreme stress, anxiety and fear for a whole range of factors. As behaviour is a communication, it would be good to look at the previous videos to recall that we should try to watch for why, write it down and talk it through in order for us to make sure that whenever possible we are able to understand what is being communicated, so that we are able to have a proactive rather than a reactive approach, offering flexible support in a meaningful way by being interested, engaging and creative. When I talk about ideas to help emotional regulation, it's good for us to think about why our children and young people might need to regulate their emotions. We all need to regulate our emotions at different times for many different reasons. And autistic children and young people can find it very challenging to understand or recognise their own and others' emotions. And this isn't just linked to being able to read facial expressions, which can be due to having difficulties giving and receiving eye contact. But also facial expressions can be unreliable and very difficult to read. Emotions are complex and rely on us to recognise inner physiological feelings and attribute these to particular emotions. Ongoing research links interoception, our internal sensory processing system, with recognising and understanding our emotional states. So, unsurprising with sensory processing difficulties or differences such as synesthesia, where there's sensory mixed messages, the individuals can have alexithymia, which is a difficulty in recognising and understanding any emotions being experienced. When our children are unable to regulate their emotions, they become dysregulated. And this might be shown in many different ways. However, the most common ones could be considered to be meltdowns, where dysregulation is communicated in a very visual and physical way through the child or young person harming themselves or others, or damaging the environment around them. And this could be considered to be a fight-flight response, or through shutting down, where dysregulation is communicated by the child or young person withdrawing and internalising their response to emotional distress in what we could call a freeze response. When watching for why dysregulation happens, there may be a clear and obvious trigger. However, it's not always easy to recognise or understand what is being communicated. Triggers or factors that could cause an autistic child or young person to become emotionally dysregulated might be a physiological reason communicating pain, discomfort, illness, hunger or tiredness. Sensory overload, becoming overwhelmed by sensory processing input. The environment, things feeling wrong or out of place and becoming overwhelmed. Fear, high levels of stress, not being able to understand or predict change what's going to happen and when. Communication. It might be not understanding what is being said or not being able to express what they want to say. Frustration due to a lack of control, the need to have to follow another's agenda, or perfectionism. And attention, either wanting and needing time away due to social exhaustion or wanting to connect and engage with others. Often it's a build-up of a range of factors filling our autistic child or young person's stress bucket to overflowing, or shaking their inner Coke bottle a little at a time until a seemingly inconsequential factor causes the bucket to tip over or the inner Coke bottle to explode. So what can we do? We can help our children to become more aware of their emotions and their sensory processing. We can consider ways in which the environment might be adapted to reduce stress levels through observations or asking for input from the children to understand what helps them to feel safe and comfortable. We can help our children to explore ways to regulate their emotions through co-regulation and supporting them to have the tools to self-regulate. We can help our children to communicate with us what they're feeling. I'm going to focus on the last 2 points. With co-regulation, we as adults should aim to be available to tune in to the children and young people we're supporting by being open and positive, calm, and showing genuine empathy. We need to use a low and slow approach when supporting a child or young person that is dysregulated. We need to think about whether we feel calm and well regulated, and if not, it's okay to get help or to have somebody to step in, because the alternative could be an extremely negative consequence, such as in an educational setting where it might involve a child being excluded. Think about your body language and proximity to the child or young person, keeping your voice quiet and calm and matter of fact, not overreacting or raising your voice. Think about the language you use, keeping sentences short and simple or using key signs and symbols. Remember that when our autistic children and young people are stressed or distressed, their processing will be significantly reduced. And think about when you need to talk. Don't ask questions, don't talk too much, or give stressful eye contact. Do give space and listen to the child or young person. Helping support our children to have the tools to be able to self-regulate might be to show them how they are able to leave the environment to be able to calm down. And this would probably need to be rehearsed or given a scripted social story to explain what is needed to be done, but it would also need to be rehearsed, and there would need to be an agreed calm area or safe space to go to, whether this is in the home environment or in an educational setting. Rehearsing relaxation techniques are good for in the home or an educational setting, and it's particularly good for all children and young people and can be done in a really inclusive way. Breathing exercise and relaxation exercises are very important for calming and supporting emotional regulation, and breathing exercises could be through a visual of counting up and down a finger, through breathing in and breathing out. breathing in and breathing out, or rubbing the thighs, or even blowing bubbles, fictional or real, to slow the breathing rate down. It could also be through yoga kids or cosmic yoga or other physical exercises. Sensory regulation goes hand in hand with emotional regulation, and there are many things that I will cover more next week, but you can have squeeze balls or clickers or even visual timers that can actually support a child to slow their breathing down and help them to feel well regulated. And the use of therapy is also can be very beneficial. It just depends on the child or young person themselves. Stimming is also a way autistic children and young people might self-regulate and become calm, and also engage in flow type activities, as I've discussed in a previous video. Mindfulness or quiet calming activities such as drawing or colouring or jigsaws can be very positive and beneficial, particularly when thinking about transitions, something that can be done 10 minutes before or after a transition to support that. And interests can be very positive to support a child to feel well regulated, whether this is reading or looking at favourite pictures, a few moments on a particular chosen activity or game such as Lego or a short iPad activity. They can also help to support a child to feel regulated, and doing that within a time perimeter, but being flexible enough to understand when a child is calm and able to transition away from the activity that they're doing. And when our children are feeling calm, we can reassure them. We can recognise what they were feeling at a level of communication that is appropriate for them, saying, I understand and know that you were feeling angry or upset. And most importantly, you can work together to try and solve the problems. And that may be through working on comic strip conversations or through role plays, or talking it through with another person, family member or member of staff. Developing a proactive approach to supporting communication for our children and young people before they become dysregulated is key to help them be able to recognise their emotions and engage with self-regulation tools. You may be familiar with the resource by Kari, Buron and Mitzi, which I will link below, of the incredible 5-point scale. And this can be a fantastic resource for showing different levels of emotions and what might be done when the child or young person is feeling that emotion. However, as with things like social stories, and I've said before, this should really be an individual and child-centred approach. It's not something that you can impose on the child or young person themselves, because it is very individual to them. An example of this 5-point scale is here, which I have done with a young person that I work with, and it's a really good illustration of how drawing by the young person themselves can actually show exactly what they're feeling and how they are feeling. And on here it's got a description that the young person would have told me that they were feeling at that different level. So in the middle they say, how's that fair? And they're annoyed about something and worried about getting detention because this was in a school environment, a secondary school setting. And it will say what they will try to do, not locking them into something where when they're dysregulated they have to do something, because obviously that would be extremely challenging. But I found it a very good way of talking things through and working on problem solving with the young person themselves. However, as I've explained, autistic children and young people can find understanding and recognising their emotions extremely challenging. And so a whole rainbow of multiple emotions might be extremely confusing for them. So I tend to use a 3-point scale. And with the 3-point scale, I can incorporate traffic lights, so green, orange and red, to indicate how they're feeling. It can be used as a whole class indicator for emotions, and you can use numbers. I find using key fobs really helpful. You can also use objects using traffic lights, such as lollipop sticks or balls, but I particularly like using special interests that I can work with the child or young person that you are supporting. And so if they're interested in animals, it might be that you use the scale and you can write what they're feeling, how they describe it and what they can do, and this can be a social story. And also you can get the children to pick out images that they relate to at those different stages, with obviously when they're at the 3 they will need to be supported or hopefully have gone to an area to engage in those calming self-regulation activities when they're at a level 2 where they're recognising that they need to engage in something to calm down and relax. And I find particularly helpful using special interests where they're able to pick out the characters' faces, and Doctor Who's a particularly good one, as is The Simpsons, where you've got some really good detailed facial expressions that the children can try and think about using. Other tools might be choice cards or different visuals to indicate emotions. So this one is one where the child or young person was able to express how they were feeling by pointing at the different emotions, and then they were able to engage with the choice card to be able to carry out one of the self-regulation and calming activities. It could be through a thermometer, which perhaps is used as a whole class activity to indicate how they are feeling. And also I'm putting this link below. This is a fantastic freely available resource to print off as an emotion chart, and there's multiple facial expressions you're able to print off and laminate, and I like to use Velcro, and I've stuck the different symbols at the side on the back, but you'd be able to put them on a wall for a child to choose from. Next time I will be sharing my final video, and this will be on sensory processing. I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.